Hey everybody, I'm back here, and today I got for you guys are trolls. Yes, trolls. I um I have made a speculative evolution of trolls, and right now I will explain to you guys the whole evolution and the history I got made up for these creatures. So where do I begin? Let me see. So around 65 to 66 million years ago, there was a creature called Purgatorus or something like that. It was the earliest ancestor of the primates, and let's say roughly around after the KBG mass extinction event when they started to diversify. Around that amount of time, the ancestors of the trolls split off uh, from the rest of the primate lineage, and the earliest beast to evolve from this was the I don't really know what you would call this guy, the Primeval Troll, maybe? I guess that's what you would call him. The Primeval Troll. The Primeval Troll lived around, let's see, maybe around 50, let me see, 58 to 60 million years ago, around somewhere around the Paleocene. They started to evolve in smaller forms, becoming a pretty big lineage in and of themselves. Um, with this being the largest species, in terms of I don't really got like a scientific name for him. Just call this species, I guess, Primeval Troll Giganteus. So Primeval Troll Giganteus was around, I think, 5 feet tall. They were pretty big, and they competed with a lot of the Paleocene large creatures like the barasukids, a lot of those crocodiles. Um, they were a pretty social species. They lived in troops, well, semi troops. The females would live in groups, while at a certain age the males would be cast aside on their own and would sometimes form bachelor troops, kind of similar to elephants. So what these creatures would do is they would spend a lot of time socializing. Their teeth their teeth are similar to rodents' teeth, where they are rootless and they grow throughout their entire life. The stomach content, or sorry, the stomach acids of said trolls were highly acidic, almost similar to vultures, where they could digest most of the things around them to the point where they could eat wood, various shrubs. They were immune to a good amount of poisons. They uh, they were omnivores in the most basic meaning, where they would pretty much eat plant and animal matter, regardless of what state it was in, even being able to snap the bones in half with primitive stone tools that they would make, almost similar to our earliest ancestors. Only difference is these guys are around a lot earlier. So they have these little black barbels here on the end of their snout, which are kind of like trying to think, almost like a trying to think. Hold on a second. Little barbels on the snout, you know, were used almost like a sixth sense to detect certain heat signatures in the ground. It's almost like a Jacobson's organ, but instead of with the smell and the tasting of things, I guess so it'd be more like a pit viper. Thinking about it, similar to a pit viper. Um, they had an excellent sense of smell, with the nostrils being underneath said spot on their nose. With these, by the way, being the lower bottom, or being the bottom jaw tusks, with the back ones being the top jaw. And like I said, similar to rodents, they would have to chew on various hard objects to wear them down, otherwise, they can grow around their face, blocking their eyesight. And similar to a babirusa, even possibly being able to pierce parts of their face. This is male. Tell by the bright coloring that they had what is it? They had color. They see in color similar to primates. or I guess they were primates. They see in colors similar to like a lot of creatures or a lot of primates today, where my bad, where the reds and the grays are a natural part of them, while the blues are a mixture of of plants that they manage to grind up with the stones that they use to 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 color themselves, kind of like war paint. They paint their face phalanges, which are similar to an orangutan's, being bigger, depending on what status the male has in their bachelor group. And during mating season, the bachelor groups, along with the matriarch groups, would meet up, and they'd have various courtship rituals. The males would wrestle each other, and non-violent disputes over over females, and they what's the word? They would have glands around the little various furry bumps in their tails, would secrete an oil that would make them more appealing, depending on the more they had it. Um, the male trolls in the bachelor group with the closest bond would actually share some of the oils among each other by rubbing it on each other's tails and fur to increase their likelihood of being picked as a mate, often helping each other out. As for trolls that weren't so close to each other, they would mostly stick to their own, and they would fight the other trolls for supremacy for the females. Now, a lot of these fights were non-violent, mostly like shoving contests, a lot of bellowing, and a noise that they would use, that they would click using their teeth and with little stones. They would click little stones on the side of their tusks to make a sort of chime noise. Um, every once in a while, though, depending on how scarce the resources were and the troll's personality, uh, every once in a while it would get violent, and but very rarely it would end up in serious injury. Uh, for the times that it did end up in serious injury, or any time they would be injured, these animals would develop these, which are little cartilaginous scutes that evolve around either injury points or over time as they got older. Um, and the greener parts on them would become moss, since moss would often grow on these scutes due to the scutes being similar to stones, and they would retain a lot of water and fluid, which would enhance the growth of the moss. Which, on occasion, the troll would pick off these scutes and eat, being almost like a symbiotic relationship. Um, Now, see, these trolls, these guys didn't actually go extinct. They diversified and spread across the world, uh, becoming what's the word? Let me see. Becoming particularly common in places like Eurasia, Asia itself, and some of them coming to North America, but that's later on. So, if we go a little bit, down the timeline, so the first species to split off from this main ancestor right here was the sea troll. Oh, shit. Hold on. Was the sea troll? Hold on. Stan? Good boy. Anyway, so was the sea troll, also known as the ocean ogre. Now, these creatures are highly derived of these animals, evolving with these natural forms evolving all the way from the Pleistocene, meaning that this is their current state, like this was their final evolution, which taking this beast to evolve into this beast all the way from the Paleocene / Eocene to the Pliocene and Pleistocene. Now, as you can see, this beast is very different from this animal right here, and it has evolved to an aquatic lifestyle. A lot of one of the biggest, sorry, the one of the biggest differences from this creature is that it's bipedal, due to it not needing to support its weight on all fours in the water. They grow to a massive 15 feet tall. Um, and they've lost the tail. The tail is shrunk into essentially a like just a nothing. Like they don't have the tail anymore. But inside the skeleton, there still is a present bone, similar to ours, but a tad bit longer. Um, the scutes on the body have largened into almost a shell on the back, allowing for aquatic plants, mosses or not mosses, seaweeds and stuff to grow, which gives them camouflage and wraps around the other parts of their arms, with the natural coloring being being a black and white mixture, with these parts being trying to think, with these parts just being the non-infected scutes covered in plant life, while some of the green pigment is part of their skin as camouflage, while most of it is this blackish blue color. There are a few fleshy bits around the trolls, right here being the most noticeable flesh spot. This is a particular organ used for absorbing a small amount of oxygen from the water around them to help keep them alive while submerged for so long. That, along with the large muscular trunk that they use to stick out of the water to breathe, these animals can hold their breath for up to 6 hours, aided by the stingy right here, the organ that allows them to absorb some of the water or absorb some of the oxygen around them via the water. And they have horns, which is one of the biggest, one of the things that split off in a lot of the trolls later on in time. Usually used for display reasons, and how they came to be was their bone growths from the top of their head. As you can see, though, the ancestor of this guy are very different. It's theorized that they did this to avoid competition with a lot of other animals, and due to the lack of competition in the water, they're ambush predators. They hunt a lot of fish and turtles. They'll snag them with their large arms, and they survived all the way up until I'd say the Romanian period, where humans started hunting them for their resources, and they eventually died off. It's pretty sad, and they have reduced teeth, due to being able to crush various mollusk shells and being able to bite the flesh of blubbery mammals. In terms of how they interact with their environment, they're mostly just still. Like they don't they travel a bit, but usually the camouflage, when they actually start hunting, they just lay there, or they stand there in one place due to their sturdy or due to their short and sturdy rotund legs, sinking into the black mud that they're surrounded by in most cases. Um, and if you're wondering how these 15-foot tall behemoths were slayed off by the shit. See, without water, he can't really stand all that well. It's even with the figurine. But if you're wondering how these beasts were slayed by humans, which, I mean, humans, our species kind of fucks up a lot of shit. But, but, not how they did it was they would have a complex strategy where they would fire certain not chemicals. What's the word? I'm trying to think. What was that stuff? Yeah. They would often use fishing nets. I guess that's a better thing. So yeah, they'd use fishing nets to provoke the troll into aggressiveness, and they would slowly over time wear the beast out via harpoons and other such things. most of which couldn't really affect it all that much due to its tougher shell. Um, the beast was overall not that fast, but it could do a sort of hop similar to hippos when they're underwater, where they hop from uh, parts of the lake and they do a slight glide. These guys weren't capable of actual swimming, so they mostly stayed to parts where their 15-foot bodies could reach the surface. Um, okay, using their trunk that would extend to to help breathe, and again with the organ that helps absorb the oxygen throughout the water. Um, but not to repeat myself too much, back onto how they would hunt them, they would eventually get them onto land. Now, these creatures can temporarily stay on land. Not very well. They wouldn't be able to walk all that well. They could do kind of sort of like a slight, hobble where they use their legs, or on occasion they would for some extra speed they would go quadrupedal and use their hands, which is usually what they did. But eventually, the sun, along with various other things, would weaken the troll to the point where it would not be able to go back into the water, and its body would actually calcify. Now, I'll explain more of this later. Um, but overall, yeah, these beasts were hunted to extinction. It's very sad. Now, it's unknown whether or not there's a tiny population of these guys left, but even if there was, they are functionally extinct. Um, which is a sad fate for such a unique beast. In terms of how they reacted with a lot of beasts in their environment, they mostly would just eat a lot of animals they would find. Um, Dolphins took a particular interest in these animals. And these, oddly enough, these animals wouldn't immediately attack them either, being being that the species were both curious of each other. But beyond curiosity, there wasn't a whole lot of relationship. Um, sharks would occasion, sorry, sharks would occasionally use these guys as hunting grounds due to them being such a hot spot for smaller fish to gather around. Um, how they sleep would or how these guys would sleep in their environment would be they would lay sorry they would kind of lay forward like this, and that's when the organ would open up on their bodies, where the little creases and folds would open up further, and the trunk would go in front of it to protect it from various creatures from going inside, and that's how they would breathe underwater. You're probably thinking, well, Chance, how does a primate, or how does a primate descendant breathe underwater? Well, you see, technically it's similar to a frog, where these little flaps on the side of them would open to an extent. Let me see if you guys can see that properly. These little flaps would open to an extent, and it would allow for a greater intake of oxygen. Not to mention, in their sleep, they would instinctively raise their snout. It's kind of like, how do you say, with hippos, where they would instinctively raise part of their body, get a breath of air, and then go back to sleep, with only half their brain piloting those motor functions. In terms of how they get rid of parasites from parts of their softer body parts, is that some species of shrimp have actually started using them as living grounds, and they as a result, they would eat the parasites off the beasts. As for the beast's horns, these markings on their horns are natural. They don't really see in color like most other trolls, just due to the fact how their environment is mostly dark. Um, with them being what's the word? They wouldn't be nocturnal or diurnal. They would just have random intervals of being awake, which made them very unpredictable to the human hunters who would hunt them, due to these guys camouflaging really well. Um, Trolls, these dudes even showing smarts to cover their horns with various plant life to help hide them even better. Uh, Here we have a smaller organ around their neck where they would ventilate heat. Due to these animals being warm blooded, uh, but still having a relatively slow metabolism. Um, what I'm trying to say is they move a lot, but they move relatively slowly, so they don't take up a whole lot of energy. Except when they strike, which their strikes would be relatively fast to catch the prey around them. These guys would eat pretty much anything, similar to their land relatives, where they would, they would eat mollusks and various decayed driftwood and fish, anything that they could get their hands on, really. Um, Oddly enough, though, they seem to not like the taste of dolphin, or not like the taste. They generally just wouldn't go after them. Um, like I said, with the relationship of those animals being relatively poorly known, but it more seeming like a curiosity to both species. Even witnessing the unintentional help of both animals, where these creatures would lie in wait, the dolphins would swim around, gathering huge shoals of fish, and the ocean ogre would snatch them nearby. In terms of how they would escape some certain depths, they would use their large forearms to climb up rocky surfaces underwater, such as the drop offs that existed around their territory. In terms of how they would interact with each other, they were pretty territorial animals. They're solitary, they don't enjoy the company of others. And how this would work a lot of the time is that the males would kind of go into a semi-quadrupedal stance. They would tuck their trunks on the side of their face and they would ram each other with the horns they got, interlocking them and having a push contest similar to how deers do rutting today. Just imagine that, but it's underwater, so it's kind of slow motion-ish. Um, but yeah, and occasionally these animals would find a whale carcass on the beach, and that being one of the only occasions where they would come up to the surface, they would slowly either crawl on two legs until they couldn't bear their own weight anymore, and then they would often switch to a bipedal or a quadrupedal stance and crawl along, grab a piece of the whale, sometimes the whole whale, depending on what species, and drag it off into the water. Much to the dismay of the seagulls and grizzly bears that would live around their habitat trying to scavenge on the whale. Yeah, those animals were rather pissed off when that happens. Like those damn sea trolls. Nah, I'm fucking around. But mating season would be a particularly odd event for these animals, where they would often collect seashells and various other things to show to the mate. And honestly, in terms of sexual dimorphism, there wasn't a whole lot in the species. They generally look mostly similar, just due to the fact of how little they would socialize with each other, only um, sending low frequency noises over a great distance to attract each other. Um, but overall, yeah, the males and the females mostly looked like this. Um, the young were given live birth, obviously due to being mammals, and their parents would push them to the surface to allow for a first breath. These animals were strong, or the mothers were strong parents, with the fathers having little to do with the raising of the offspring. Although adoption from a male to an orphan child was not uncommon. Um, Overall, though, these particular animals gave up the ability to drink milk with being born with their teeth, and so immediately they would go on to eating whatever is around them. A trait that would be carried on to most other trolls, eventually losing the need for mammary glands. Alright, so let me see. I think I've covered enough of the ocean ogre, the sea troll. I'm pretty sure I could cover the other ones. Let me see. And this next guy, your guys are gonna like. What's up, Mangsy? Big old boy. Nah. This guy is the Norwegian troll. Also existing, in North America in small numbers, but mostly in Europe, Norway. These animals would grow up to a monstrous 9 feet tall, similar to the sea troll, but a little bit different. And they were one of the smartest of the trolls. Now these guys lived around, or they evolved from this ancestor all the way back from. Let me try to think here for a minute. I don't have a script or anything. This is just mostly what I remember of the species. Along with me figuring it out along the way, if that wasn't obvious. But these guys are one of the more derived trolls, similar to the ocean ogre. You know, that doesn't look weird at all, huh? It looks like, hold on. Boop. But yeah, back onto this guy. The Norwegian trolls were a large, mostly solitary creature. They were one of the smarter species of trolls, eventually learning how to take animal hides from the creatures that they ate to apply to themselves. Somewhere down their evolution, they lost a lot of their fur, evolving into large. Can I help you? Okay. Evolving into large keratinous scales, with patches of fur still remaining on them. To combat the cold, let me go back to the scales. The scales were condensed pieces of fur evolved into scutes. Unrelated to the scutes found on these trolls and on this guy. The various different forms of the scales and the scutes evolved independently from each other over thousands of years. These guys would they would have large territories ranging over trying to think. I mean, I guess I wouldn't know the territory size. I mean, I don't really know how to calculate that. But they were solitary, very territorial, highly aggressive creatures. Um, these guys were well feared by many species and lasted for quite a while. Let me get them in a quadrupedal stance here, so at least people can somewhat. All right, that ain't gonna happen. Never mind. Just there we go. I'm just gonna have them like that. So these guys were living somewhere around the Ice Age. They first evolved in the Pliocene, from a highly derived version of this creature, slowly evolving bipedalism and losing a lot of the digits on their feet, evolving almost similar to theropod feet to withstand the weight better and make them more agile. While these creatures do walk on 2 legs when they're just wandering around, when they want to gain speed, they'll switch over to a quadrupedal stance, like so, I guess. And they would use leaping bounds, similar to like a deer when they're galloping. Now, you're probably thinking, well, what's up with the clothing on him and the skull wrapped around his neck? Well, you see, these creatures had roughly the same intelligence as Homo erectus and some of the earlier hominins. Not too intelligent, they didn't know how to make fire, but they did know how to make various tools. And they knew, more importantly, how to weave animal parts together, using sinews and other such things, along with their own saliva mixed with tree sap, which would act like a glue to attach various things they liked, such as shells from nearby beaches or caves, shiny rocks, or skulls of the things they ate, which they seemed particularly fond of. This male right here, representing what I believe to be a, let me see, a Denisovan skull, most likely. Maybe this being a younger male. With the largest recording species being about 10 feet tall. Yeah, they get pretty big. They get pretty up there. Their diets would mostly include the bisons, the various Ice Age bisons, the Irish elk, Megaloceros specifically. Um, they weren't really capable of hunting all that big of or all that small and fast creatures, but they knew how to set up very primitive style traps, almost like snares that they would attach to trees using creepers and vines from their local area. They that one of their favorite preys though was the rhino, the woolly rhinos that lived in their region, where they would often ambush the creature from a distance, and they would kind of grapple with it. These animals were like wrestlers almost like the Smilodon of trolls, where they would wrestle with their prey and tire them out, usually overpowering them, sometimes using rocks and other tools around them to assist in beating them down, and then they would kill them once they weren't able to fight back. These creatures were apex predators to the very extent of the word, although it wasn't like they didn't have competition. For example, God. For example, Arctodosimus, the short-faced bear, would give these guys quite a bit of trouble, and they would they would often get in fights with these animals whenever encountered. Smilodon was another issue in various places, which Smilodon almost acting like a pseudo predator towards these guys. With the biggest pseudo predator, I say that in quotes because they didn't hunt them often, but on occasion other predators would hunt these guys for food. Which the biggest pseudo predators being to these guys were American lions. With their large pack or with their large pride numbers, would be able to overwhelm a Norwegian troll. But some of the largest alphas of this species would figure out how to fight back against them, usually using their environment to their advantage. Um, due to a distinct trait being showed among the later trolls throughout their evolution, including the Norwegian troll, the sea troll, and the woodland troll over there, which I'll get to soon. They started to develop horns, usually as bony parts of their body. So it's kind of like an extension of their skull rather than. Okay, so never mind. I guess it's just like regular horns. But various they were what's the word? Right, they were just display structures, which most interestingly in the Norwegian troll, the display structures very closely resemble an eye on the front of their horn. Now this was to distract a lot of predators from their actual eyes, which were a lot smaller and on the side of their faces, and the various other horns being used for the displays here. Now the female versions of these creatures showed the most sexual dimorphism out of all the trolls. The trolls as a whole genre didn't really show a whole lot of sexual dimorphism, but these creatures did, with the females not having these various markings and having a lot lighter of clothing. Typically just mostly due to the fact how the males like to show off a lot of the things they collect. While females did this to a lesser extent, they would still like to hold on to things that they found fascinating. That being more of a trait as a species rather than individuals, but mostly preferring on each individual's taste in terms of what they like to carry around them, such as actually I think I already brought that up earlier. Sorry if I repeat myself a little bit. I like to get carried away. These trolls were not very social animals, with most of their skills being taught to their parents over time. They were born with their teeth, similar to the sea troll here, and various trolls throughout their history. So they did not have a need for memory glands. The most of their stomach acids were highly acidic, which was a trait found throughout the troll genus, allowing them to eat pretty much anything around them. While these guys were apex predators, they were not appalled to eat plants, wood, various things, and some of them have even been shown to eat rocks, not being able to properly digest them, but being able to partially digest some of the minerals out of them, the various salts and other things, the oxygen, iron and all that. With these animals eating bones, the ones that they don't take is decoration. What else? What else was it? And they often wearing the creatures that they would kill as part of their clothing to help them keep warm, due to their ancestors coming from a tropical climate. The Norwegian troll retains the most of the tail that that its ancestor had. What are you growling about? Yeah, these dogs are ridiculous. Having lost a lot of the nerves in its tail due to the cold around it, and it being a relatively smooth surface. What are you getting on about, boy? What are you doing? Can't you see I'm doing something here? Did you growl at me? Monkey mouth? What? What you want? Goofy? Bro, you just sit there. You don't even know what to do with yourself, you moose. Anyway, sorry, back onto this guy. Like I said, a lot of their toes have reduced to practically nothing to help support their weight, and giving them traction with these large claws, which would help them during the icier parts of their habitat. These guys would mostly prefer steppes, like the mammoth steppe type environments, along with lightly wooded areas. They started to decline during the Ice Age due to a lot of their prey items being going extinct around this time, and but they managed to survive all the way up until the Middle Ages, where knights would hunt them or would fight them to gain royal status and various other things. One of which being troll hunts, which these people would go on for fun. Kind of like, imagine a fox hunt, but way more fucking dangerous. But eventually these animals did go extinct, which was sad. You never know. With enough time, they could have been humanity's greatest intellectual rival. Either way, trying to think here. If there's anything you guys would want me to cover more on this particular troll, I could. Like I said, most of the teeth are rootless, even with this species, and they grow continuously. Can grow all the way up to here and around, if not taken care of properly. The nose is used as a resonating chamber to make large bellowing calls, and they have an excellent sense of smell. Not the best spatial awareness of any creature on the world, but they're able to be stealthy when they need to be, often lying in wait for a lot of creatures. But since a lot of their prey they hunt is slower than they are to an extent, they're typically able to catch them. Almost think of almost think of like the T-Rex of the Ice Age. This is what this creature typically is, with a high amount of competition from other animals. Arctodus being pretty much the only one that could physically square up to it, and most of the time they'll back down to the physical prowess of these animals, and the tool using capabilities. Which the most advanced tools they manage to create are mostly just skulls, like just various bones that have been sharpened and broken, splintered, along with various rocks they've been able to form into cutting edges, and with nearby logs. These animals were incredibly strong, with the strength of at least 25 humans, which is really something. They're around. Let's see. Sea troll. Sorry, I never established really how much these guys were. The sea troll's around 2 tons. These the primeval troll can get about somewhere around they varied a lot in size. The primeval trolls, they were around 350 to 500 pounds, depending, uh, you know, on the hierarchies in between the matriarchal and the bachelor groups. For these guys, since they were mostly solitary, they didn't have no size differences. These guys would get up to a ton in weight, and like I said, we're about 9.5 to 10 feet tall. Um, so it's funny to think that an Arctodus would actually be taller than these guys when standing up. But the longer reach of the arms, along with the sheer brutality of these creatures, would allow for them to be worthy adversaries. Now, these animals would fight each other for territory quite rather often, especially on the males. With females fighting each other to a lesser extent, being willing to share certain territories, while males, they weren't having any of that. They would often fight each other in brutal fights, sometimes ending in death. With these creatures, they would use their tusks to bite into each other, their arms to grab resources around them to help fight. Often, with the loser of the fight, the winning male would climb on top of him and claw him with the back of his toes, signifying that he's won. They'll often lose smaller body parts in fights, as for example, this male has lost a piece of his ear in a fight. And on occasion, certain lion species, like the cave lion and the American lion, depending on where they live, have actually learned to stick around these fights, as they will often prey on the weaker troll that is lost. These creatures often live in caves and have been seen confronting cave bears for a lot of their territory, in which these animals will. It's around about a 40. It's about a 40. Or wait, no, it's about a 50-50 chance as to who would win, or at the very worst, a 40-60, with the 60 being in the Norwegian troll side, due to them using tools in their higher intellect. And sheer brutality, like I can't stress how these animals were very aggressive. And that's pretty much it for the Norwegian troll. If there's anything you guys would think that would fit this creature well in terms of behavior, let me know. Overall, though, I think I covered most of it. Most of what you guys would want to know. I mean, mating rituals wise, I don't really think they had a whole lot. Just these males here would occasionally eat the offspring of the orphaned trolls. The orphan Norwegian trolls. Unlike the sea troll or the primeval trolls, these animals really didn't like the company of each other, and only generally joined up when it was time to mate, leaving shortly afterwards. And here we have the Woodland Troll. Now this guy is fascinating because he is the most intelligent out of all the trolls. What is it, dude? What? What is it, boy? You like growling? I know you don't like it when the camera's on you. That's right, you walk away. That's right, go lay down. You don't like it when the camera's pointed at him for some reason. So anyway, back onto this guy. The Woodland Troll was the longest living species of the trolls. With the sea troll dying around the Roman era, and these guys dying out at around the medieval eras. And these guys never really dying out. They just kind of evolved into the other species. Let me see.